All right, let's jump into a story that's thousands of years old, but honestly, feels like it could have happened last week. It's this incredible story about injustice, about resilience, and about a song. A song that was sung in the darkest of places and was so powerful, it literally shook the foundations of a prison.
I want you to just picture this for a second. You're in the deepest, most secure part of a prison. You've just been publicly shamed, beaten horribly, and now your feet are locked up in iron. It's about as hopeless as it gets. And right there, in that moment, you decide to sing. That is exactly where we meet two guys, Small Man and Woodsman. You probably know them better as Paul and Silas.
And yeah, that's the big question, right? What on earth could they have done to end up in a situation like this? To really get why their song matters so much, we've got to rewind and see what landed them in that cell in the first place.
So their path to this prison, it didn't start with a crime. Nope. It started with an act of liberation. And, as we're about to see, setting someone free came with a seriously high price.
Now, this whole account comes from the book of Acts in the Bible. A good way to think of it is like part 2 of the story that starts in the Gospel of Luke. What's so cool about Acts is that the main character isn't really a person. It's the Holy Spirit, this active, powerful force that's guiding and empowering this group of very human, often scared, early believers.
So here's how it all went down. Paul sees this young slave girl being exploited as a fortune teller, and he sets her free. A compassionate act, right? Well, her owners are furious because he just destroyed their main source of income. So they grab Paul and Silas, drag them into the public square, and accuse them of stirring up trouble. Before they know it, they're stripped, beaten with rods, and tossed into the slammer. And this is where it gets really telling. Look at the difference between what they said in public versus what was really going on. The public accusation was all about fear of outsiders. These guys aren't from around here, they're causing trouble. But the real motive? It was all about money and power. Plain and simple, this had nothing to do with justice. It was about protecting their bottom line.
Which brings us right back to that dark prison cell. Back to two guys who have every single reason to be angry, defeated, and just silent. But that is not what they chose to do.
Let's really paint the picture here. They weren't just in jail. They were in the inner cell. Think maximum security, the darkest, deepest part of the prison. Their feet are clamped in stocks, so they can't move. By any normal standard, this is a completely, utterly hopeless situation.
And yet, around midnight, they start praying and singing. And here's the detail you just can't miss. The other prisoners were listening in. This wasn't just a private moment of worship. It became a public performance, a powerful statement that even in the deepest despair, their hope wasn't gone.
And that song, it did a lot more than just echo through the prison. It actually became the trigger for something that should have been impossible.
Then it happens. Suddenly, the ground starts to heave. And this isn't some tiny tremor. It's a massive, violent earthquake that shakes the very foundations of the building that was meant to keep them locked away forever.
The result is pure, beautiful chaos. All the prison doors just fly open. And then something even crazier happens. Everyone's chains and bindings just fall off, all of them. This wasn't just Paul and Silas getting a lucky break. This was a moment of total sweeping liberation for every single person in that prison.
So, okay, an ancient story about singing prisoners and an earthquake. Why does this matter to you and me today? Well, this is where the story challenges us to look at the idea of a prison a little differently. Not just as a physical place, but as a metaphor for all the things that hold us captive in our own lives.
So it's asking you, directly, what are your prisons? What are the things in your life that make you feel trapped, beaten down, like there's just no way out?
You know, maybe your iron bindings feel like the insane pressure to get good grades, or that constant anxiety about what you're supposed to do with your life. Maybe it's the weight of what everyone else expects of you, or just a crippling fear of failing. It could even be a broken relationship, or that feeling of being totally powerless against the injustices you see in the world.
The story points to a key to shaking these foundations, and it's the same force that was at work back then, the Holy Spirit. The text describes this not as some vague feeling, but as God's active presence here in the world, a real source of comfort, guidance, and power that for believers lives inside them. So here's the big takeaway. Your song, whatever that looks like for you, your choice to show hope, to have faith, to be resilient when you're in your own inner cell, it's not just a way to feel better. According to this story, it's an act of power. It's proof of that spirit inside you that's ready and able to shake the foundations of whatever is holding you back.
And you got to remember, just like Paul and Silas, you're not singing into a void. The people around you, your fellow prisoners, they're listening. Your resilience, your hope, your refusal to be silenced, it could be the very thing that helps set them free too. So the question this whole story leaves us with is a really big one. What song will they hear you sing?